Oh, man, I hate Mondays.
Nah, man, it's Tuesday.
Wait. What day is it again?
You know what day it is, Matt. It's Tuesday. Brewsday Tuesday.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
Woo-hoo. You can finish the rest of it.
It's time for Brewsday Tuesday, brought to you in part by the Spider Restaurant. That needs to get better glasses.
Sell a restaurant and six-pack store. We can pick it up from here, man. It's all good, Matt. But hey, man, thank you so much for joining us, bro.
Oh, modern technology.
No,
oh my
that's the
gosh.
life.
You're going to go, man, we planned this whole time and then he messed it up right there at the end.
It's all good. It's all good,
no,
brother. So it is, for those that are listening and maybe didn't quite pick up on it, Matt Anthony, our voice guy, is joining us because it's National Voiceover Day. I'm sure you're celebrating in full force as every year is the case.
I celebrated a lot in front of the microphone.
Yeah.
So I guess that was a celebration.
Yeah.
You know,
basically the way you celebrated by just by a regular work day.
Pretty much. Right. So yours truly is really in the mood for a quality ale. No doubt about that.
Awesome, man. Well, this was per Matt's recommendation for Brewsday Tuesday this week. We let him pick the styles. Of course, Big Nate is with us as well. I went beer shopping because I'm not. The next segment is more up my alley. You said let's do a good pilsner, which rightfully so. I think it's one of the hardest beers to do well, I would say.
It is. That's a really good point you bring up, DreZ, because pilsners, in their own right, they can't sort of be faked. If you make a bad IPA, you can sort of cover things up, with 6 or 7 different kinds of hops. And sometimes that can do the trick. But, the Pilsner, it takes longer. It's fermented differently. The cold fermentation process, needs more time. And since most Pilsners really aren't hazy by definition, although, American brewers kind of do their own takes on things, the Pilsner, you're right, it's a tough beer to come up with a quality one.
And for those that aren't picking up on this, Matt actually knows way more about beer than we do, even though we've been doing this show for 7 years.
Captivated. Like, he's got the
So you
Ken
guys have been
Barnes
doing this
thing
show for
going on.
7 years?
Well, it was me and Huck. And then last year on, I guess it was year 6, Huck decided to, sort of retire. And we turned the range over to Big Nate. So now Big Nate is my co-host. But yeah, man, we've been drinking beers on the radio for this is our 7th year, man. So
no one shut it down yet.
Yeah, we're still doing it, believe it or not.
Congratulations.
So let's go around the horn and say what everybody's drinking. So I popped from Divine Barrel Brewing, which is out of Charlotte, North Carolina. The Italian Pilsner, which is an Italian-style Pilsner. So not just your basic Pilsner, they're going Italian style. And one of the things that stood out to me, Matt, is just I love just the plain, simple label. Look at that. I mean, it's just white, black. It just tells you what it is. And to me, that means the beer must speak louder than, slapping one of those fancy labels on it. So
yeah, I really like that a lot.
No.
Sometimes the label in can art, even though it's very, like, we admire it, as fans of art, sometimes I was telling someone the other day, we went to a beer fest up in Cleveland, and sometimes I have to spin the can around 3 or 4 times just so I can figure out what exactly I'm drinking. I mean, it's great art, and I'm married to an artist, but sometimes simple is better.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And Nate, I picked now we're going the other way because yours did have a cool label, but more so it was the brewery name that stood out to me for Nate's.
Okay, so first off, I just want to talk about the artwork, and then we'll get into this excellent name that DreZ was kind enough to pick out for me. And now I'm reading into things. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's the Pilsner style from Ass Clown Brewing.
Nice.
Yes.
Ass Clown.
So,
and where are they out of?
They are out of Cornelius, North Carolina.
Oh, okay. Also,
and
North Carolina.
It says it's a great day for a beer. There's a nice little flowery artwork on there. It's a beautiful can. It's a beautiful label, and I mean, this would grab my attention. Also, I don't know if you noticed, if you're watching on video, they definitely worked in the clown into the flower.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. And for those if you're listening, awesome. Appreciate you, of course. And you can be watching on the Facebook Live, on the YouTube as well. So you can actually picture what Matt Anthony looks like. I mean, I've been around the NRV. I'm sure maybe you bumped into me here or there, but Matt Anthony, man, you probably have never seen our voice guy. And there he is with his awesome, and this is another thing we need to bring up. You're out of Ohio. I love your shirt. You got the Cleveland colors and the beer. Right there on there, man. So the beer scene in Ohio, it's not too bad. Are you drinking an Ohio beer right now? What do you got over there?
First of all, thanks for the kind words. And I know that I don't get to say this enough to the people that I work with. And I've been a part of, the radio scene in the New River Valley for a pretty long time. And, I've driven through your neck of the woods. I've never had the luxury of stopping. I know you and I have talked at length over the years about, coming down to Lane and and checking out the Hokies.
Taking on a Notre Dame game, right? You're an Irish fan.
I am. I guarantee that's going to happen, whether it's the Irish or not. It's going to happen sometime in our lifetime. But I take a lot of pride in just being affiliated with this radio station. I mean, there's tons of voices out there, and there's tons of voices that fit, the rock format, and I regard it as a huge honor, to be a part of things. So to answer your question, I am in Northeast Ohio. I'm in Akron, and we are very, very blessed in the Buckeye State to be approaching 366 breweries statewide. And the growth in the Buckeye State has been pretty huge over the past decade. And there are certain really hot areas of the state right now. And I would say that the hottest areas are probably Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati. And so Columbus beers, they impact Northeast Ohio, where I'm at, but we haven't seen a lot of Columbus beers. So today, I'm actually drinking a beer from Rockmill Brewery in Lancaster, which is about, I would say, 20 miles southeast of Columbus. So for you geography nuts out there, don't lambaste me if I'm out, off a little bit. This is DreZ and Nate, a brewery that I don't have a lot of exposure to. When I saw this weekend, I was kind of excited because I really wanted to try some things that I hadn't really been privy to before. So this is actually a Pilsner, a Belgian-inspired Pilsner. So I'm guessing there's probably some Belgian yeast that was used in this beer. And so I'm guessing that I'm probably going to experience some, maybe a slight hint of orange or coriander. One thing I was warned about on some of the apps is that this was pretty carbonated, almost overly carbonated.
Yeah.
And they were right on the money.
No kidding.
When they talked about this beer. So sometimes what I'd like to do when I get these sort of slightly overcarbonated beers, this is more than slightly, I just really like to do aroma. So I don't know how you guys approach a beer, but there's a certain way I kind of like to approach a beer. And one, for all your listeners and the people who are maybe trying to learn a little bit more about beer, not that I'm an expert by any stretch, I like to choose a proper glass, for a style. And this kind of lager glass is one that I really like for Pilsners. It has sort of a cylindrical feel to it. And what I like to get is clean, is crisp, clean aroma right off the top end. So I'm getting that from this beer, and it's giving me a lot of time to smell it because I'm waiting for it to go down.
To simmer down. No, man, you're right. One of the things that is key is having the proper glassware. And unfortunately, here at the station, Huck got me, probably in year 2 or so, a really, really nice set of proper glassware. And you get that. It's the real, I can't remember the name of the brand, but it was like thin glass. Like you would think when you think of a normal pint glass, which is what I'm using because it's got the sponsor on there. It's a lot thicker and stuff. But yeah, it was real thin, and man, you really can't tell a difference if you're drinking out of the proper, vessel for your beer. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I really like with, especially with double IPAs and beers that have more hop aromatics is like a tulip glass seems to sort of bring, some of those things out of the nose. And so I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
This beer is pretty muted, as far as aromatics. I mean, it's there, but I'm not getting really any like Belgian sense out of this beer at all.
Yeah. And that's what I was interesting because, I do love, Belgian beers, quads and triples, and of course. And I've noticed they do generally have at least, and I don't know, it must have something to do with the Belgian yeast that sort of almost like banana-esque kind of scent and taste to it. So I don't know, I guess, but you're probably not really picking that up, you're saying, with that? It'd be interesting to taste that in a Pilsner, though. I'm wondering how does that affect the ABV, though? Like, I know mine's a typical 5%. Pilsners usually are right around there.
Yeah, right. This doesn't
do a
whole lot as far as ABV. This is only sitting at about 4.7.
Oh, interesting.
But I think the first sip that I've had, it's naturally a little thin in the mouthfeel, but I think it tastes pretty good. I mean, I think that for a lot of times for a sub 5% beer, I'm not a huge fan of sub 5% beers. That alcohol burn to me kind of contributes. I don't know how you guys feel, but that alcohol burn kind of contributes, to the overall essence of that beer. And, since there aren't a lot of like British milds, which I think, quality made British mild is somewhere in the 3.6, 3.7% range. Those really, you're not going to find those in America a lot. And having had a chance to drink a couple of those over in England years ago, that's a really great beer style. But so far, I'm kind of liking this beer, even though I don't really get the Belgian-esqueness of this beer. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll let you have a sip or two because I know it's probably just going to be me wanting to ask you a bunch of questions. So suck it down while I'm talking.
He's got time. Did you see that head?
Yeah. Well, yeah. He's got to let it settle. It's getting there, though. It's definitely getting there.
Yeah. It is. And again, like I was kind of warned of that. So what are you guys thinking of your beverages? Mine's
very tasty. I mean, it's funny. Like I'm pretty glad actually that you decided to opt for the Pilsner because, like you said, and the double IPA is perfect because in the next segment, which is what we're gonna have, that's more so my speed. And when Huck was here, especially, that was more so what we were drinking. Since Nate's been here, not as big into the IPA, so we're branching out. So whenever I do, get a different style beer, it almost is pretty nice because it's like, oh yeah, forget that there's other beers out there that aren't just hop to craziness levels that are super ABV, that are still enjoyable. And I'd say this one definitely falls into that category. Now, I've had some stuff from Divine Barrel before, and usually they do knock it out of the park, and this Pilsner is right up there with it, man. When it comes to a Pilsner, the main thing I think of is just very crisp. Just nice, light, crisp, just, nothing that's knocking you over the head. And this is it, which is funny because you'd think, when you're really seeking something out, you don't want it to just be subtle. You want it to stand out. But really, when it's fresh and crisp, to me, that's what a Pilsner is looking for. So this is ranking pretty high in my boat. I mean, we'll untap it and give our final score later. But Nate, how's yours tasting?
So it's interesting. Matt brought up a point that I kind of had the opposite opinion on, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's a lack of experience, but Matt said that Pilsner is a style that's really hard to do well. And I'm hard pressed in my experience, and maybe I've just been very, very, very lucky. I've not had a Pilsner that I've been like, yeah, this is terrible, pour it down the sink.
Are you serious?
I've had a lot of mid-grade Pilsners, like, yeah, this isn't great, I'm not going to drink it every day, but it's not, like I've had IPAs, it's like, yeah, this is piss water, I don't want to drink this.
True, but you got to remember that most of like the big beer company beers, at least in my, they're Pilsners, and they're terrible. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to point out.
I wasn't going to include...
you're not counting. You're talking craft?
Craft Pilsners. Okay. I've been pretty lucky, I guess. So, I mean...
Well, that's great. That's great.
you know,
and I guess I wasn't implying. I don't think that that by its very nature, like Pilsner's so difficult and no one's going to make a good one. I think that like 2 or 3 of the breweries that I've went into recently, they didn't even have like a Helles lager or a Pilsner on their, in their itinerary. Like it just wasn't even a part of what they're offering. So Nate, you must have landed on taking the ride on the good luck ship because, that's pretty good.
No, I mean, it like I said, it's not, it's one of those things where it's not my standard go-to. It's not going to be my, I see a Pilsner, I'm going to go grab it. But like, for instance, just earlier this weekend or over the weekend is Beal's Pilsner and just randomly saw it. I think it's the Helles Lager.
Mm-hmm.
Grabbed it, tried it, loved it.
Yeah, I've had that one.
Yeah, I'm not going to make this my go-to, but it's just one of those things that I saw and grabbed it. And I think that's where that Pilsner, you should have it in your catalog, I think.
Absolutely.
Because it is a solid staple beer, and it's going to get people off the big gravy train that is the big brewers.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point, because honestly, that's pretty much when I am actually trying Pilsners. And like I said, when I try other styles, it's kind of nice to, get one that you're not used to appreciating and then still like it. Is when you go to breweries, I always try and do the flights. That way you can really get a taste of everything that they have to offer, see what they do well, see what they focus on. Usually you can get an idea of that just by looking at the menu, because if they have 7 different IPAs, black IPAs, double IPAs, milkshake IPAs, clearly that's their bread and butter, and then maybe the other ones might not be to your liking. The sours might be a bit off or something.
Yeah.
But either way, I mean, I think flights are the way to really get a good idea and a good grasp on what a brewer can do, I suppose, or maybe what their focus is. You could probably tell a lot of I got a feeling that this is their favorite style of beer.
Yeah, I think too that there sometimes maybe is a trend for a brewery to do, Pilsner and lager type beers almost exclusively, because so many brewers are getting so super experimental that some brewers are swinging in the opposite direction. Like they're concentrating on just German styles. And, because, I believe it's pronounced Reinheitsgebot, the German purity law of 1516, where you can only use 4 ingredients to make a beer. And so brewers look at that as a challenge. Like, I'm going to make a solid Pilsner. I'm going to make a solid Dunkel. I'm going to make a solid, dark, lager, or a black lager. And these are beers that they require sort of the same care and attention of any lager type beer. So it can be difficult. I know there's a brewery, and I wish I could remember the name. And I was reading an article on female brewers, and she's based in the Denver area. And she's only doing lagers. Like, you can't get an IPA, you can't get a porter. She's only doing, those kinds of sort of German, Austrian style beers. And she really wants to do them well. So, I mean, it's a style that I appreciate. It's not I wouldn't say it's a go-to style for me all the time. But I will say this, that in preparation for our session, it was tough to find a good selection of Pilsners. I don't know if you guys ran into that problem, but I found it kind of tough, actually.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually was in North Carolina. That's where I found these, hence both of them being North Carolina beers. And I went down the entire seasonal and specialty beer section that they sold individual cans, and I only found this one that I have, the Italian Pilsner. I had to go to a totally different aisle and ask somebody to finally find. There were a couple other ones, but it seriously got to the point where I was just like, if I can even just find 2 Pilsners, those are going to be what we're going to drink, because at this point there's just such a lack of selection. I think I ended up finding a total of 4 total, and then these were the 2 that I ended up picking.
Wow.
No, I mean, and that makes sense. I think there's a lot of oversaturation on the market. Let's all go back to making Pilsners.
And honestly, I like what you're talking about with the female brewer in Denver doing the lager thing, because thankfully there is such a vast love of craft beer that people can go that niche and still be able to, go afloat. Of course, I would assume and hope she is making good lagers, because if that's your game plan and you're not doing it well, then you're pretty much screwed. But it is fantastic that craft beer has gotten so big that man, it really is just blown up everywhere. I mean, there are certain states where it's bigger, but Ohio is certainly one of them. Virginia is another one that it's so huge down here, man. So that's another thing when you come down to visit, we'll hit a few breweries, because there's a number of them, even just right here in the NRV, that we could tap into and enjoy.
Yeah. My sister just moved to the Tidewater area. We're going down to see her next month, and she's been bringing back home various Virginia beers, and it's a state that I don't have a ton of exposure to. I mean, I certainly have some exposure to like the DC area and Northern Virginia beers, but and Richmond to a certain extent, but your area, Roanoke, the Tidewater, these are areas that are relatively new for me. So it's actually pretty exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. A lot of good beer down this way. Unfortunately, no Virginia beers on this round, of course, but we'll still untap them nonetheless and give our official opinions via the Untapped scale. That's how we like to rate our beers and keep track of them, Matt. DreZ Drinks is my handle. Big Nate Danger sits across from me. Are you on the Untapped app?
I am. I should be as Beerman Matty.
Beerman Matty. All right, you can friend Matt if you want to follow. We'll definitely do that, and we'll tag you in this. So how are you feeling of your Pilsner, Matty? If you want to lead the race, I did that because it looks like a racehorse maybe on the beer there. But how are you feeling? And of course, you're familiar with the Untapped scale. So what rating do you think that Pilsner rakes?
I'm trying to actually. I'm having some issues logging into my Untapped account, so
not a big deal. You
guys go first.
Okay. Well, you don't actually have to do it on hand. We just give us our thoughts, because it's the 0.25 scale. So basically, I've already praised this Italian Pilsner, which really, now that I think about it, anytime I go to an Italian restaurant, pizza and beer, such a great combo. More often than not, when you're looking at the beer menu, all the main Italian beers you're thinking of, they're all Pilsners. So it kind of makes sense that that's a good style for that area. This would be delicious with a pizza, man. I think deep dish pizza day is coming up on a Tuesday next month. So I think we are going to have to do a pairing on that. But no, it's delicious. As I said, man, very nice and crisp. Divine Barrel does good things down there in North Carolina. I think this one is ranking up there. Again, not really my style, so I mean, you can maybe take that into consideration, but I do think this is a solid 4 out of 5 in my opinion on the Untapped scale.
Okay.
All right. I will grant you that, and I will one-up you. This Pilsner style from Ass Clown. Super carbonated, crisp, very, very crisp, very light flavor, not a lot of back flavor on your tongue. I'm going to be fully honest with you. It's going to be hard to find a Pilsner better than this on the East Coast.
Wow.
It's going to be hard, not impossible. So I'm giving it a 4.75.
Wow. It's really that good. Wow. That's interesting.
It's very good.
Huh. Because honestly, I was curious about that one, because this one had much better marks on Untapped than that one. And so maybe and you were saying how you've never come across a bad Pilsner. Maybe you just don't have a tongue to really critique Pilsners.
I mean, that's a possibility. We'll see. I'll try it.
I'll try it during the break, and I can throw my 2 cents.
Really good.
Okay, interesting. How's yours, Matt?
Yeah. Well, I have to say that the aside from the overcarbonation and the slightly thin mouthfeel, I think this is pretty good. It doesn't in any way resemble like a Pilsner Urquell. I don't get Saaz hops out of this at all. I think it's very light. I think there's a little bit of almost like dishwater off flavor to this beer, but it's not off-putting. I mean, every once in a while, maybe it's the combination of the hops that are used and the yeast strain that's used can create a few off flavors, off aromas. I'm getting a little bit of that, but I don't think it's anything that would make me go, oh, wow, this is, I can't finish that. I'm going to pour this, down the drain. But I think that the Belgian-inspired lager, that part is escaping me a little bit, but I don't really know the brewer's intent. I like this at about a 3.25.
That sounds about right, because
I could tell yeast.
I could tell as Matt is giving his critique, and it's so much more in depth and detailed than ours, that he is a much more harsher of an untapper and with his ratings. 3.25 in my bag. If I give a beer 3.25, I'm not going to want to drink it again. Which I don't know. Maybe that is the case that you're thinking. It doesn't sound like you're that impressed with it. So.
Well, I think as it warms up, and sometimes I make sure that I pull my beers out of the beer fridge about a half an hour to 40 minutes before I drink them.
Okay.
I don't want any numb flavors, in the beer. And what I've discovered is that as these beers warm up, I mean, even as you're drinking a beer out of a beer clean glass, and hopefully everybody's using beer clean glasses, that once that beer starts to warm up, even after 20 minutes, you can start to notice some nuances of that beer that you didn't get, when you first opened that beer. And so for this beer, that kind of off flavor was a little more accentuated to me. So that I think that probably accounts for my rating on this beer. But this is not a bad beer by any stretch. It's, it's not an indictment of Rockmill at all. So, but overall, yeah, that's what I would go with.
Awesome. Well, there you go. There is Matt Anthony, our voice guy. We're celebrating National Voiceover Day here on Brewsday Tuesday. So we got our guy Matt on the line. What we're going to do here is we'll take a break. We'll play a song. We come back. We'll drink another beer. We usually let our guest pick the song. We're a rock station, obviously. So I don't know who's your favorite rock band or what you're digging on these days, but I'm happy to play a song for you. Nate is advocating for Motorhead, which I'm fine with, but you can obviously.
I'm good with that.
All right, you want to throw a little Motorhead? Yeah, Ace of Spades is the shirt. He's wearing his hockey shirt. That's an awesome hockey shirt. Well, that means we're going to have to chug, because that's a pretty short one. So we'll have to chug these Pilsners, and then we'll come back, and then we'll step it up a notch and do some double IPAs. Coming up on Brewsday Tuesday. Stick around.